The surgical lights blazed overhead as Dr. Emily Carter's gloved fingers paused mid-incision, her eyes fixed on something that shouldn't exist. A small metallic fragment embedded deep within the tumor tissue she'd just removed from William Thompson's jawbone. "What is that?" her resident whispered. Dr. Carter used forceps to extract the object carefully. It gleamed under the lights, unmistakable in its form. "It's a bullet fragment," she said quietly. "American ammunition. 5.56 millimeter. The operating room fell silent except for the steady beep of monitors. William Thompson, 72 years old, lay unconscious on the table. 3 weeks ago, he'd thought it was just a pimple. Now, a piece of metal from 1968 had nearly killed him in 2024. But to understand how a simple pimple saved a hero's life and exposed a 50-year-old secret that would reunite 2 families, we need to go back 3 weeks. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. The rain had started early that Thursday morning in southeast Portland, a gentle autumn drizzle that misted the windows of the small craftsman house where William and Martha Thompson had lived for 43 years. Inside, the familiar ritual of mourning unfolded with clockwork precision. William Robert Thompson, 72 years old, sat at the kitchen table in his crisp blue work shirt, the same style he'd worn for decades, each one carefully ironed by Martha the night before. The newspaper lay open to the sports section, though his eyes rarely focused on the words anymore. Retired from Boeing after 40 years as a machinist, he filled his days in the converted garage workshop, building birdhouses he donated to local elementary schools. Martha Ann Thompson, 69, moved through the kitchen with practiced efficiency, mixing cornbread batter for breakfast. Married 46 years this coming November, she'd learned to read her husband's silences the way other women read books. The retired elementary school teacher knew every weathered line on his face, every unconscious gesture, every shadow that crossed his eyes when the war memories came unbidden. On the fireplace mantel sat a black and white photograph. William at 22 in his army uniform, young and lean and unbroken. Beside it, an old radio from 1968 that never played. On the top shelf of the bedroom closet, barely visible, sat a dented metal ammunition box that Martha had learned years ago never to touch. Their daughter, Dr. Rebecca Thompson Williams, lived just 30 minutes away in northwest Portland, but it might as well have been 3,000 miles. 45 years old, divorced 3 years, Rebecca worked as an emergency medicine physician at Legacy Emmanuel Medical Center. She hadn't visited her parents' house in 5 years, not since the wedding her father failed to attend. The neighborhood knew the Thompsons as quiet, dependable people. Mrs. Patricia Collins, the 68-year-old widow next door, checked on them regularly. Earl Watson, William's old army buddy from Vietnam, called from Gresham once a month, though William rarely spoke more than a few words. At the Veterans of Foreign Wars Hall, 3 miles away, a support group met every Tuesday evening. William had attended exactly twice in 20 years, both times walking out before the meeting started. The Thompson household ran on routine. Breakfast at 7, workshop until noon, lunch together, Martha's library volunteer shift in the afternoon, dinner at 5:30 sharp, Jeopardy at 7, bed by 9. It was a quiet life, carefully constructed, deliberately small. William touched his neck more often lately, Martha noticed. His nightmares had increased. She heard him gasp in the dark. Last week, he'd mentioned needing to tell Rebecca something, then never brought it up again. Everything was normal. Everything was controlled. Until the pimple appeared. Monday morning arrived with a kind of gray drizzle that made Portland famous. William stood at the bathroom sink, razor in hand, when he noticed the small raised bump on his right jawline. Just a pimple, he thought, nothing more. He'd had them before, though rarely at 72. "Honey, you have something on your jaw," Martha said during breakfast, reaching across the table with her napkin. William pulled back. "It's nothing, Marge. Don't fuss." But it wasn't nothing. By noon, working in his garage workshop, he'd touched the spot at least 50 times. The bump had grown to the size of a pea, red and warm to the touch. When he bit into his sandwich, a sharp pain shot through his jaw. After Martha left for her library shift, William stood before the medicine cabinet mirror and squeezed. He expected the familiar pop, the release of ordinary pus. Instead, something thick and yellowish-white emerged, calcified, almost solid. The smell hit him immediately, foul and wrong. It wasn't a normal infection. Blood mixed with the discharge, and the material kept coming, more than any pimple should produce. "Bill? What's wrong?" Martha appeared in the doorway, drawn by his sharp intake of breath. "I'm fine. Just a cyst." He grabbed a towel covering the mess. Martha saw through him immediately. "Promise me you'll see someone if it doesn't improve?" William nodded, having no intention of going anywhere. Tuesday brought no improvement. The bump grew larger, now the size of a marble. The constant ache in his jaw made chewing difficult. He smeared Neosporin on it 3 times, swallowed ibuprofen like candy. At dinner, he positioned his face carefully so Martha wouldn't notice. By Friday, Martha noticed anyway. "Bill, it's worse. You need to see Dr. Morrison." "I'm not running to the doctor for a pimple. I survived worse in Nam." It was the first time in months he'd mentioned Vietnam. Martha's face tightened. "This isn't about toughness. It's about taking care of yourself." William stood and walked to his workshop, ending the conversation the way he always did, with silence and distance. Saturday morning he woke to find his jaw visibly swollen. The pain radiated down his neck. When he took his temperature secretly in the bathroom, 99.8, he didn't tell Martha. He spent the day in the workshop, unable to concentrate, his hand constantly moving to his jaw. That evening, Patricia Collins stopped by with blackberry pie. She took one look at William and frowned. "Bill, that looks infected." "Everyone's a doctor suddenly," William muttered, retreating to the kitchen. Later, after Patricia left, Martha cornered him. "She's right. You're being stubborn as a mule." "I'm fine." "My late husband was the same," Patricia had said quietly to Martha at the door. "Men don't take care of themselves till it's too late." Too late. The words echoed in Martha's mind all night. Sunday morning, William could barely open his mouth. The swelling had spread down his neck. Martha delivered her ultimatum at breakfast. "We're going to urgent care or I'm calling an ambulance." William hated making scenes more than he hated doctors. He relented. Legacy Good Samaritan's emergency room was overcrowded. Flu season beginning, minor injuries, the usual chaos. They waited 2.5 hours in plastic chairs, the silence between them heavy with unspoken tension. William stared at the wall. Martha twisted her wedding ring around and around. When Dr. James Harrington finally called William's name, the physician looked exhausted. 12-hour shift, 6th day straight, iPad in hand. He examined William's jaw for perhaps 7 minutes. Inflamed sebaceous cyst with secondary infection. At your age, Mr. Thompson, skin changes are common. But the stuff that came out, William started. Here's an antibiotic. Dr. Harrington was already typing the prescription. Return if fever spikes above 101 or swelling worsens. Should we see a specialist? Martha asked. Only if it doesn't improve in a week. But it will. Next patient, please. Monday morning brought false hope. William took the prescribed Keflex religiously, 4 times daily, exactly as directed. By Wednesday, the swelling seemed less angry, the redness fading slightly at the edges. He allowed himself a small moment of vindication. See? Just needed antibiotics, he told Martha over cornbread. She nodded, cautiously optimistic, but her eyes never left his face. Wednesday night, the dream returned. William hadn't had it in months, but this time it came with startling clarity. Jungle canopy, monsoon rain hammering down, gunfire cracking through dense foliage, someone screaming his name, "Thompson, get down!" A sensation of burning in his lower back, sudden and fierce. He woke, gasping, sheets soaked with sweat. "The war dream again?" Martha whispered, already awake beside him. "I'm fine. Go back to sleep." But she felt him touch his lower back unconsciously, fingers tracing an old scar she'd asked about once, decades ago. He'd said it was shrapnel. She'd never asked again. By Thursday, the improvement reversed. The swelling returned with vengeance, spreading toward his ear and down his neck. The skin grew shiny, tight, taking on a purplish hue. His temperature climbed to 100.2. William hid the thermometer in his workshop drawer. Friday morning, dizziness hit him while sanding a birdhouse. The workshop walls tilted. He gripped the workbench, tried to steady himself, but the room spun faster. The crash of the falling work table brought Martha running from the kitchen. She found him on the concrete floor, conscious but disoriented, surrounded by scattered tools and wood shavings. "Bill, can you hear me?" "I'm okay. Just stood up too fast." He tried to rise, couldn't quite manage it. Martha saw his jaw and felt her stomach drop. The swelling had grown to the size of a tennis ball, the discoloration spreading like a dark stain across his neck. "We're going to the hospital. Now." "I'm fine. Just help me up." "Look at yourself." Her voice broke. She'd spent 46 years learning patience with this man's stubbornness, but not today. She half dragged, half guided him to the bathroom mirror. William stared at his reflection. For the first time, real fear crossed his face. "Maybe we should go," he said quietly. The argument Martha had prepared died in her throat. She wanted to scream at him. "Why do you always wait until it's too bad?" But tears came instead. She cried while helping him to the car, cried while Patricia Collins heard the commotion and rushed over. "I'll drive," Patricia said, taking one look at Martha's shaking hands. "You're too upset." The drive to Legacy Good Samaritan was silent, except for Patricia's worried glances in the rearview mirror. William sat in the back seat, holding Martha's hand, neither of them speaking. There was nothing left to say. They'd had this same pattern for decades, William hiding, Martha worrying, crisis forcing truth. At 11 in the morning, Legacy's emergency room was chaotic but not overcrowded. A different physician was on shift, Dr. Michael Chen, younger than Dr. Harrington, with sharper eyes that took in William's condition immediately. "This needs imaging. Now. No consultation, no dismissal." He ordered a CT scan with contrast and full blood panel before William had even finished checking in. "See? Overreaction," William muttered to Martha in the waiting area. She didn't respond. She'd used up her words. The wait for CT results stretched 2 hours. Martha tried calling Rebecca, got voicemail. "Rebecca, it's Mom. Dad's in the ER. Call me." She kept her voice steady, but her hands trembled around the phone. "Don't worry her over nothing," William said. "Nothing?" The word came out sharper than Martha intended. "Bill, look at you." It was the first time in years she'd let her anger show. William shifted uncomfortably, looked away. Patricia brought coffee from the cafeteria, sat with them in the uncomfortable plastic chairs. "My Jack had something similar," she said quietly. "Lump on his neck. Kept saying it was nothing. By the time they found the cancer—" She didn't finish, didn't need to. William's jaw tightened. He touched his neck, winced. When Dr. Chen finally returned, his expression was serious enough to make Martha stand. He led them to a private consultation room, never a good sign. "Mr. Thompson, we need to talk." He pulled up the CT images on a tablet, angled the screen so they could see. A white mass showed clearly against the gray of bone and tissue. "This isn't just an infection. There's a mass in your mandible, your jawbone." His finger traced the outline on the screen. "It appears to be an ossifying lesion, abnormal bone growth." "Bone growth?" Martha's voice barely above a whisper. "From a pimple?" "The pimple was just the surface eruption. This has been growing underneath for some time, possibly months." Dr. Chen zoomed in on the image. "The tumor is approximately 3 centimeters, showing aggressive growth pattern. It's close to major vessels and nerves." William found his voice. "How long do I have?" "Let's not get ahead of ourselves. It could be benign, an ossifying fibroma, or malignant. We won't know without biopsy." Dr. Chen set down the tablet. "But given the size and location, you need a specialist. I'm referring you to OHSU, Oregon Health and Science University. Dr. Emily Carter, one of the best oral and maxillofacial surgeons in the region." "When?" Martha asked. "Today. We're arranging ambulance transfer now." The word ambulance made it real. William felt the room tilt again, but differently this time. Not dizziness, fear. "You did the right thing coming in," Dr. Chen said. "This is serious, but it's treatable." William looked at Martha. "I'm sorry I waited." She took his hand, squeezed hard. "We're going to get through this." During transfer preparation, Martha's phone rang. Rebecca's name flashed on the screen. "Mom, what's going on?" "Your father." Martha's voice finally broke completely. "They found something. A tumor in his jaw. They're transferring him to OHSU." "I'm coming." "Which hospital?" "OHSU." "But Rebecca, you don't have to—" The line went dead. Rebecca was already moving. William watched his wife's face, saw the tears, felt the guilt settle deeper. "You don't have to call her. She's busy. She's your daughter. She needs to know. She doesn't want to be here." Martha looked at him with something close to anger. "You don't know that." But they both knew the truth. 5 years of silence because of one wedding, one absence, one more thing William couldn't explain without opening doors he'd kept locked for half a century. The ambulance ride to OHSU felt longer than it was. William lay on the gurney, Martha beside him in the jump seat, watching the paramedic monitor vitals. Blood pressure elevated, heart rate 95. The ambulance ceiling reminded William of another ambulance, another time. Jungle sounds, the metallic smell of blood, someone screaming. His breathing quickened. "Bill?" "Stay with me." Martha's hand found his. He blinked back to present, to her worried face, to Portland streets outside the window instead of Vietnamese jungle. The flashback receded, but left residue the way they always did. OHSU Hospital sprawled across the hill overlooking Portland, a massive medical complex where afternoon light slanted through tall windows, much busier than Legacy. The gurney moved quickly through corridors directly to the surgical consultation floor where Dr. Emily Carter waited. She entered the examination room with a resident and a nurse whose name tag read Grace Hayes. Late 40s, confident movements, but warm eyes that immediately found Martha's. "Can I get you anything? Water, coffee?" Grace asked. Martha shook her head, couldn't speak. Dr. Carter's examination took 15 minutes, a stark contrast to Dr. Harrington's 7. She palpated William's jaw carefully, checked range of motion, pressed along his neck. William winced at every pressure point but didn't pull away. Let me show you what we're looking at." Dr. Carter pulled up the CT scans on the large monitor mounted to the wall. The images filled the screen, undeniable in their clarity. "This is an aggressive osseous tumor, most likely an ossifying fibroma, but we can't rule out malignancy until we biopsy." Her finger traced the white mass on the screen. "You see here, it's pressing on the inferior alveolar nerve. That's causing your pain. And here, it's growing toward the carotid artery. That's why we need to act quickly." Martha stared at the screen, trying to understand how something invisible could be so large, so threatening. "What's the treatment?" William asked. "Surgical excision. We remove the tumor plus a margin of healthy bone tissue." Dr. Carter turned to face them directly. "I won't lie to you. There are significant risks. Facial nerve damage is the primary concern. You could lose sensation or movement on the right side of your face. There's also risk of bleeding and infection." "What happens if we don't operate?" William's voice was steady, but Martha felt his hand trembling in hers. Dr. Carter met his eyes. "It will continue growing. Eventually, it will compress your airway or erode into major blood vessels. Both are life-threatening." The room felt smaller suddenly. Martha gasped, a small sound she couldn't contain. "Then we operate," William said. The resident brought consent forms, page after page of risks and complications, written in language designed to protect the hospital while terrifying the patient. William's hand shook as he signed. Martha witnessed his signature, her hand covering his. Rebecca arrived 30 minutes later, still in scrubs from her shift at Legacy Emanuel. Her dark hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail, exhaustion evident in the shadows under her eyes. She stopped in the doorway when she saw her father, shock crossing her face before she could hide it. "Rebecca, thank God." Martha stood and mother and daughter embraced. Rebecca approached the bed slowly, carefully, as if approaching something fragile. "Hi, Dad." "You didn't have to come. You're working." The words landed wrong. They always did. "Where else would I be?" The hurt flashed in Rebecca's eyes before she masked it with professional detachment. Grace Hayes, reading the room's temperature, slipped out quietly. "I'll give you all a moment." Awkward silence filled the space Grace left. Rebecca sat in the chair but didn't take her father's hand. 5 years of distance couldn't be crossed in seconds. "Mom filled me in. Dr. Carter's excellent. Best in the region. You're in good hands." "I know you're busy," William started. "Dad, please don't." Rebecca's voice carried an edge. Martha intervened, her voice soft but firm. Rebecca took time off work to be here. William looked surprised, genuinely. You didn't have to do that. You're my father. The words hung between them, loaded with everything unsaid. 5 years of phone calls that lasted 3 minutes. 5 years of holidays spent apart. 5 years since the wedding. Rebecca shifted into doctor mode because it was safer than being a daughter. She pulled up the scans on the room's computer, studied them with professional eyes, explained the images to Martha in detail William couldn't follow. He watched his daughter work, saw the competence in her movements, and felt a complicated mixture of pride and regret. Dr. Carter mentioned the tumor's been growing for months, maybe longer, Rebecca said, still looking at the screen. Did you notice anything before the pimple? Sometimes my jaw ached. Thought it was old age. Rebecca turned to face him then, frustration breaking through. Dad, why didn't you get it checked? Didn't think it was important. Didn't think, she stopped herself, took a breath, released it slowly. Years of therapy teaching her to pause, to breathe, to not say the things that couldn't be unsaid. Martha stepped in again. What matters is we're here now. Dr. Carter returned, breaking the tension like a clean incision. Surgery is scheduled for tomorrow, 7 a.m. We're estimating 6 to 8 hours. I'd like to observe, if that's permitted, Rebecca said. Professional courtesy. Of course. William looked at his daughter. You don't need to. I want to. It was the first moment of real connection, fragile, but there. Evening arrived with paperwork and preparations. William would stay overnight for pre-operative monitoring. Martha refused to leave, and the hospital provided a reclining chair that looked more torture device than furniture. I should go home, Rebecca said around 8. Feed my cat, shower. I'll be back at 5 a.m. Beck, William used the old nickname, hadn't said it in years. Rebecca stopped in the doorway, hand on the frame, not turning around. Thank you for coming. Her voice came tight, controlled. Get some rest, Dad. After she left, Martha settled into the terrible chair. William stared at the ceiling tiles, counting them, losing count, starting over. She loves you, Bill, Martha said into the darkness. I know. I don't know how to fix what I broke. Start with the truth. Tell her about Vietnam. I can't. She wouldn't understand. She's a doctor. She understands trauma. Not this kind. Martha didn't push. She'd learned decades ago that pushing William only made him retreat further. But time was running out for retreat. Around 10 p.m., Grace Hayes came in for final pre-op vitals and IV placement. Her manner was efficient but kind, the way good nurses learns to be. First surgery? She asked William while checking his blood pressure. Had one in the war. Field hospital. Vietnam? William nodded. My father served too. Marines. Never talked about it much. Grace wrapped the blood pressure cuff with practiced hands. Smart man. Grace's smile was sad. Or scared man. He died 5 years ago. Lots of things left unsaid. She made notes on her tablet, then looked at William directly. That's the hard part for us. The things they didn't say. After Grace left, the room fell quiet except for the periodic beep of the IV pump. Martha tried to sleep, but couldn't. She watched William breathe, watched the slight flutter of his eyelids, watched the way his hand occasionally moved to his lower back. Around 11:30, she got up, sat on the edge of his bed. Bill, I need to ask you something. He opened his eyes. That box in the closet, should I open it? In case. In case what? In case you don't wake up. Don't talk like that. We have to talk like that. What's in there, Bill? The pause stretched long enough that Martha thought he wouldn't answer. Then, quietly, my war. The part I couldn't bring home. Will you ever show me? Another long pause. If I make it through tomorrow, maybe. Promise? I promise. They'd made promises before, promises William hadn't kept. But Martha chose to believe this one. She had to believe something. Around midnight, exhaustion finally pulled William under. The dream came immediately, vivid and detailed. Jungle, 1968. Monsoon rain turning everything to mud. Private James Mitchell on the ground, leg mangled, blood mixing with rainwater. Lieutenant Mark Henderson's voice cutting through the storm. "Leave him, Thompson. That's an order." "No, sir, I won't." "You disobey me, soldier." William hoisting James onto his shoulders, the weight of a life, the slickness of blood. Turning to run, the crack of a gunshot, not distant, not from the jungle, but close, too close. Burning in his lower back, sudden and fierce. Falling. James screaming his name. "Bill! Bill, stay with me!" Everything going red. William jolted awake, yelling. Monitors beeped frantically. Martha and the night nurse rushed in. "Mr. Thompson, you're okay. You're safe. You're in the hospital." He couldn't breathe right. Sweat soaked the thin hospital gown. His hand went to his lower back, pressed against an old scar, a piece of history embedded in his flesh. "The war dream?" Martha asked, though she knew. He nodded, still gasping. "I'll get you something to help you sleep," the nurse offered. "No, no drugs. I need to be clear-headed tomorrow." After the nurse left, Martha broke hospital rules and climbed into the narrow bed beside her husband. She fit herself against him, careful of the IV line, and felt his heart hammering against her chest. "Mar, what if I don't make it? Then I'll have loved you for 46 years. That's more than most people get. I haven't been a good husband." "You've been my husband. That's enough." "There are things I never told you." "Then tell Rebecca after surgery." "Promise me." "I promise." They lay together until dawn started to gray the windows. Around 5:30, Rebecca returned with coffee for her mother, stopped in the doorway seeing her parents together in the narrow bed. Something in her face softened, a glimpse of the child she'd been before distance grew between them. She didn't disturb them, just sat in the chair and watched them sleep, and for the first time in 5 years saw her father as vulnerable instead of distant. At 6 a.m. the surgical team arrived. Pre-op medications administered, consent forms re-verified, final questions asked and answered. Dr. Carter visited briefly. "Ready, Mr. Thompson?" "As I'll ever be." "Dr. Williams, someone will show you where to scrub in." The final moments before transport moved too fast and too slow simultaneously. Martha and William alone briefly, the kind of moment that carries the weight of possible goodbye. "I love you, Martha Ann Thompson." "I love you, William Robert Thompson." They kissed, tender and long. 46 years in that kiss. "I'll be right here when you wake up." Rebecca's turn. She stepped to the bedside, and the awkwardness was still there but thinner now. "Beck, I'm sorry." "Dad, don't." "No, listen. I'm sorry I wasn't there for your wedding, for a lot of things." Tears started in Rebecca's eyes. "Dad, you can tell me after surgery." "But if I don't make it." "You will. You're too stubborn not to." A small smile from both of them, first real smile they'd shared in years. "There's a box in my closet. Metal, locked. Key is taped inside my old Bible. If something happens, open it, you and your mother." "Nothing's going to happen. Promise me." "I promise." The transport team wheeled him out. Martha and Rebecca walked alongside until they reached the restricted area. Final waves, doors closing. Then mother and daughter stood alone in the corridor, the distance between them suddenly smaller. Patricia Collins arrived minutes later, having driven over at dawn. The three women settled into the surgical waiting room with terrible coffee and worse chairs. "Mom, do you know what's in the box?" Martha shook her head. "Something from Vietnam. He's never let me see." "Why mention it now?" "Maybe he's finally ready to let go." Patricia spoke quietly. "My Jack had a box like that. Found it after he died. War letters. He never wanted me to see the ugliness. Thought he was protecting me." Martha's voice was barely audible. "Bill's always been like that. Protecting me from his pain." Rebecca said what they were all thinking. That's not protection. That's just loneliness. 2 hours into surgery, a nurse emerged to update them. "Dr. Carter asked me to let you know surgery is progressing. They've located the tumor and are removing it now." "And?" Martha gripped the chair arms. "That's all I can share for now. Dr. Carter will come out when she's finished." Not reassuring. Not reassuring at all. 6 more hours stretched ahead like years. Inside operating room 3, Rebecca stood in the observer's gallery, gowned and masked, watching through the glass as Dr. Carter worked with meticulous precision. The tumor was larger than the CT scan had suggested, its tendrils wrapped around the mandibular nerve like roots around a pipe. "We'll have to sacrifice part of the nerve," Dr. Carter announced to her team. "No way to preserve it." Rebecca's medical training told her what that meant. Her father would wake with permanent facial numbness, possibly paralysis on the right side. He'd struggle to smile, to eat, to recognize his own face in the mirror. The careful dissection continued. Dr. Carter removed the tumor mass piece by piece, checking margins, ensuring clean edges. Then her instruments struck something that shouldn't be there. Something hard. "What is that?" She used forceps to extract a small object from within the tumor tissue. The metallic fragment gleamed under the surgical lights, small as a pencil eraser, but unmistakable in its form. "Is this shrapnel?" Dr. Carter held it up to the light. Rebecca leaned forward, her breath catching. She'd heard the story. Her father had surgery in Vietnam in 1969. They'd removed all the fragments. That's what he'd always said. "Send it to pathology immediately," Dr. Carter instructed. To her resident, she added, "Foreign body reaction can trigger abnormal tissue growth." After 50 years, this could have migrated, and the body tried to wall it off with bone. That created the fibroma. Rebecca pressed her hand against the glass. The war had tried to kill her father in 1968. Now it was trying again in 2024. Sudden bleeding interrupted her thoughts. A vessel nicked during dissection. Red flooded the surgical field. "Suction! I need better visualization!" Rebecca's heart hammered. She couldn't intervene. Wasn't her surgery. Wasn't even her hospital. She could only watch as her father's life hung in balance over 10 tense minutes that felt like hours. "Got it." Dr. Carter's voice remained calm. "We're stable." The team moved to biopsy samples while waiting for pathology results on the frozen section. 20 minutes that stretched endlessly. Rebecca stood frozen in the gallery, hands clenched inside her surgical gown. The OR phone rang. A nurse answered, listened, then turned to Dr. Carter. Pathology confirms benign, ossifying fibroma with chronic inflammation. No malignancy. The collective exhale was audible even through the glass. Rebecca felt her knees weaken. Not cancer. Thank God, not cancer. The reconstruction took 3 more hours. A titanium plate to replace the removed bone section. Attempted nerve repair, though Dr. Carter had warned the damage was extensive. By the time the last suture was placed, 8 hours and 20 minutes had passed. Rebecca went to find her mother. Martha stood when she saw Rebecca emerge from the restricted area, still in scrubs. Patricia was holding Martha's hand, had been holding it for hours. "He's alive," Rebecca said first, because that was what mattered. Surgery went as well as could be expected. Martha's legs gave out. Patricia and Rebecca caught her, guided her back to the chair. The tumor was benign, completely removed. Rebecca knelt in front of her mother. But there was nerve damage, significant nerve damage. He'll have numbness, probably some facial weakness. But he's alive. He's alive. 20 minutes later. Dr. Carter appeared, still in surgical scrubs. Exhaustion evident, but satisfaction too. She repeated what Rebecca had said, added technical details, explained the long recovery ahead. Then she handed Martha a small, sealed evidence bag. Inside was the metallic fragment, cleaned but still recognizable. "We found this embedded in the tumor tissue. It appears to be from a 5.56 millimeter round." Dr. Carter paused. "That's American ammunition." The words hung in the air. American. Not enemy fire, not shrapnel from a mortar or grenade. Martha stared at the tiny piece of metal that had lived in her husband's body for 56 years. "American? Yes, I'm sorry. I know that must be difficult to hear." After Dr. Carter left, the 3 women sat in silence. Patricia finally spoke. "Friendly fire?" Martha didn't answer, couldn't answer, because if it was friendly fire, that meant everything William had carried all these years. The silence, the shame, the distance might have an explanation she'd never imagined. William was moved to the surgical ICU that evening, heavily bandaged, tubes everywhere, but alive. Martha was allowed in first, alone. She stood beside his bed and cried silently. Tears she'd been holding since morning finally released. The next 48 hours passed in careful monitoring. Vitals stable, pain controlled. Martha stayed constantly, leaving only for bathroom breaks. Rebecca visited between her own shifts at Legacy, bringing her mother food Martha didn't eat. On the 3rd morning post-op, William's fever spiked. 102.3, heart rate elevated to 115, blood pressure dropping. Grace Hayes, who'd become his primary ICU nurse, called the surgical team immediately. Blood cultures drawn. Chest X-ray ordered. Results came back grim. Post-operative sepsis with aspiration pneumonia. William had contracted an infection during surgery, his weakened, elderly body unable to fight it off. Critical condition were the words Dr. Carter used when she called Rebecca directly. "What? I was just there this morning." Rebecca was mid-shift at Legacy, had just sutured a laceration. "He was stable." Sepsis can develop quickly in elderly patients. You should come." Rebecca called her mother, tried to keep panic from her voice. "Mom, get to the hospital now. I'm 20 minutes away." The ICU became controlled chaos. Broad-spectrum antibiotics started through the IV, fluids wide open. William's blood pressure continued dropping despite interventions. Martha arrived to find her husband's room filled with medical personnel, Grace coordinating care with quiet efficiency. "Is he going to die?" "We're doing everything we can," Grace said, which was not the answer Martha wanted. Rebecca arrived in scrubs from her shift, hair still pulled back, moving on autopilot. She saw the monitor numbers, read them with a physician's eye, knew what they meant. Sepsis in elderly patients carried 30 to 40% mortality. Dr. Carter explained the options with brutal honesty. "We can intubate him again, put him on a ventilator, or we can keep him comfortable. Given his age, re-intubation has its own risks." "Don't say it." Rebecca's voice was sharp. "We're not giving up." Martha looked between her daughter and the doctor, feeling the weight of a decision no wife should have to make. What would he want? "I don't know," Rebecca admitted, and the confession hurt. He never talked about this stuff. He has a living will. Somewhere, Martha tried to remember. Something about no heroic measures if quality of life— "This isn't that," Rebecca interrupted. "He could recover." Could? The single word carried all of Martha's fear. Grace Hayes, who had been checking IV lines, spoke quietly. "Can I say something?" Off the record. Both women nodded. "I've been a nurse 25 years. The patients who make it, they have something to live for. Something unfinished. Martha understood first. The box. He mentioned a box." Rebecca nodded slowly. "He made you promise not to open it without him." "He might not wake up." Martha's voice broke on the words. "Maybe we need to know what's in it." Rebecca stood. "Come with me. We should do this together." "I can't leave him." Patricia, who'd been sitting quietly in the corner, spoke up. "I'll stay with him. I'll call if anything changes." Grace added her promise. "I'll be here too, every minute." Martha looked at her husband, unconscious, machines breathing for him, and made a decision. "We're going to look, Bill. I'm sorry, but I have to understand." The drive to southeast Portland felt endless. Rain started, typical Portland weather, but heavier than usual. Rebecca drove while Martha sat silent, hands twisted in her lap. The house was dark when they arrived. Martha's hands shook so badly she couldn't get the key in the lock. Rebecca took it gently, opened the door to the home she hadn't entered in 5 years. Nothing had changed. Same furniture, same photos, same sense of careful preservation. They went to the master bedroom, to the closet where Martha had dusted around a box for decades without ever touching it. The metal ammunition box sat on the top shelf, old and dented, and rusted at the corners. Martha lifted it down, heavier than she'd expected. A small padlock held it closed. Rebecca remembered. Dad said the key's in his Bible. The worn, leather Bible sat on William's nightstand, pages soft with age. Taped inside the front cover, a small brass key. Martha's hands shook too much. "You do it." Rebecca unlocked the box. Inside, carefully preserved, lay the pieces of her father's war. She lifted them out one by one, laying them on the bed. A photograph. 2 young soldiers, arms around each other, muddy and exhausted, but smiling. William at 22 on the right. Another soldier on the left. Name tape visible. Mitchell. Dated on back in faded ink. April 1968. Dog tags, not Williams. Mitchell, James R. O positive, Methodist. Dark stains that might have been blood still visible on the chain. Military documents. Article 15, non-judicial punishment, dated May 12, 1968. Charge, failure to obey direct order. Details partially redacted but visible. Refused to leave wounded soldier. Punishment, reduction in rank, pay forfeiture. And at the bottom, a letter. Multiple pages, yellowed with age, handwriting careful and deliberate. Martha opened it with trembling fingers. "Dear Bill," it began. Rebecca and Martha read together in the dim bedroom light while rain drummed on the roof, and 25 miles away, in an ICU, William's heart continued beating, unaware that his deepest secret was finally being revealed. The letter was dated September 1969, written from Seattle, Washington. Private James R. Mitchell's handwriting filled 4 pages, each word carefully formed, as if he'd written and rewritten them many times before committing them to paper. "I'm writing this because I don't know if I'll ever have the courage to say it to your face," it began. "You saved my life on April 28, 1968, and I've been trying to find the words to thank you." Martha's hand covered her mouth as she read the description of the ambush. The jungle, the monsoon rain, Mitchell hit with his leg shattered. The squad pinned down, Lieutenant Henderson ordering them to move, ordering them to leave Mitchell behind. "That's a direct order, Thompson." "Then court-martial me, sir. I'm not leaving him." William had hoisted Mitchell onto his shoulders and run for the evacuation zone. 50 yards from safety, a single gunshot. William dropped, hit in the lower back, fell on top of Mitchell, who was screaming his name. Then the truth that had been buried for 56 years. I saw it happen. We all did, but were told never to speak of it. Lieutenant Henderson shot you, Bill, not the enemy. Henderson. He aimed for your legs, tried to stop you from disobeying. But you stumbled, and the bullet hit higher, lower back. You could have died. You should have died. Rebecca made a sound, something between a gasp and a sob. Martha couldn't make any sound at all. The letter continued. A medic reached them, both evacuated to the field hospital. William's surgery removed some shrapnel, but not all. The fragment they'd found today had been missed, overlooked, left to migrate through his body for decades. Mitchell's leg was saved, barely. Henderson filed a report claiming Thompson was wounded by enemy fire while heroically evacuating Mitchell. The lie became official record. William was later court-martialed for disobedience, reduced in rank, punished for the very act that should have earned him a medal. Henderson warned the squad that anyone who spoke the truth would be next. Everyone stayed silent. "I'm the biggest coward of all," Mitchell wrote. "I let them punish you for saving me." The letter went on. Mitchell had married. His wife Linda was pregnant. "My son will exist because you defied orders. I don't know how to repay that. I tried to submit a report, but military lawyers say the case is closed." Henderson died in '69 in a different battle. So there's no one to prosecute anyway. He'd looked for William, called bases, hospitals, VA offices. No one would tell him where William had gone after discharge. "If you ever get this letter, please know you were the hero that day. I'm alive because of you. My children will be alive because of you. That's more than a medal. That's immortality." The letter was signed, "Your brother-in-arms, James," with a Seattle address. Additional items fell from the envelope. A newspaper clipping from 1971, James Mitchell's wedding announcement in the Seattle Times. A photo of James holding a newborn. Note on back, "Linda Jr., born 1970. She exists because of you." William's Purple Heart, never accepted. A recommendation for the Distinguished Service Cross, submitted by Mitchell but denied by the military. Martha and Rebecca sat on the bed surrounded by pieces of a story they'd never known. The silence in the room was heavy, broken only by the sound of rain and their own breathing. "He was shot by his own officer," Rebecca finally said, "for saving someone." "And they punished him for it." Martha touched the Article 15 document, the official record of her husband's shame. "All these years he carried this." "It wasn't shame," Rebecca said, voice thick. "It was honor. He just couldn't see it." Martha's phone rang. Patricia's name on the screen. Both women's hearts stopped. "You need to get here," Patricia said. "His pressure's dropping fast." They ran to the car, Rebecca driving too fast through Portland streets. Rain heavy now, windshield wipers on full. Martha clutched the letter to her chest. This piece of truth they'd discovered too late. The ICU was full of medical personnel when they arrived, alarms blaring. Dr. Carter at the bedside shouting orders. "BP 70/40. Heart rate 140. "Bill!" Martha tried to push through, couldn't reach him. Rebecca pulled her back, held her as their father's heart rate dropped on the monitor. 40, 30, 20. The line went flat. "Start compressions!" Dr. Carter's voice cut through Martha's scream. A nurse began CPR, pushing hard and fast on William's chest. Rebecca held her mother, both of them crying. Patricia holding them both. "Ted, don't you dare die." Rebecca's voice broke on the words. 4 minutes of compressions. Epinephrine administered. The defibrillator charged. William's body jerked with the shock. The monitor showed a weak, thready rhythm. "We have a pulse," Dr. Carter announced. "Thready, but there." William was intubated, placed on a ventilator. Alive, but barely. Machines breathing for him now. The team worked to stabilize him, while Martha collapsed into Patricia's arms. At 2 a.m, in a small family room off the ICU, Martha finally broke completely. "He's dying, and he never told me the truth." Rebecca held her mother like she'd held her as a child, roles reversed. "He was protecting you." "I didn't need protection. I needed my husband." 46 years of frustration poured out in sobs. "I never really knew him." Rebecca confessed her own guilt. "I blamed him for missing my wedding. I wasted 5 years being angry." "He was ashamed," Martha said. "Thought you'd see him as weak. I just saw him as absent." Patricia's quiet wisdom cut through their grief. "My Jack died with words unsaid. Both of us too proud. Don't make the same mistake. That letter proves your husband was a hero. Make sure he knows you know." Grace appeared in the doorway. Technically off shift, but she'd stayed. "He's stable. Critical, but stable. You can see him one at a time." Martha sent Rebecca first. Their daughter needed to speak to her father, needed to say things that had waited too long already. Rebecca sat beside William's bed in the dimmed room, took his hand, and began to talk to her unconscious father. Rebecca spoke into the darkness of the ICU room, her father's hand limp in hers, the ventilator breathing for him with mechanical precision. Dad, I don't know if you can hear me. They say people in comas can sometimes hear. I'm going to talk anyway. Her voice was steady at first, clinical almost, the way she spoke to patients. Then it cracked. I'm sorry I've been angry for 5 years. Mom told me why you didn't come to the wedding. The PTSD, the crowds, the uniforms. I wish I'd known. I would have done it differently. Small ceremony, just us. Instead, I shut you out. That was cruel. She paused, wiped her eyes, continued. We found the box, Dad. We read the letter. From James Mitchell. We know what happened. You saved his life and they punished you for it. That's the most wrong thing I've ever heard. The ventilator hissed and clicked. The monitor beeped steadily. William didn't move. You're not broken, Dad. You're a hero, and I'm sorry it took me 45 years to see it. I'm sorry you carried that shame alone. I'm sorry I didn't make it easier for you to talk. Rebecca laid her head on the bed rail. If you wake up, when you wake up, we're going to find James Mitchell, or his family, if he's gone. They need to know you're still here. And you need to know that what you did mattered. You saved a life, Dad. That's everything. So please, wake up. Please, fight. I need my dad. Mom needs her husband. We have so much time to make up for. Please. She fell asleep there, head on the rail, hand holding his. Martha found them an hour later and didn't have the heart to wake either one. The morning of day 4 brought a change. Grace noticed it first during her shift. William's fingers moving slightly. A neurological response that hadn't been there before. She called Dr. Carter immediately. They began lightening sedation, allowing William to emerge slowly from the chemical darkness. Martha and Rebecca were called in. They stood on either side of the bed, watching for signs of consciousness. William's eyes fluttered. Grace spoke gently. "Mr. Thompson, can you hear me?" A slight nod. So slight it might have been imagination, but it was there. "Bill, I'm here." "I'm right here." Martha's voice broke on the words. William's eyes opened, confused and disoriented, pupils contracting in the light. He saw Martha first, then Rebecca. Tried to speak, but couldn't. The endotracheal tube prevented it. Tears ran down his face instead. Dr. Carter made the decision quickly. "He's ready. Let's extubate." The procedure took minutes, but felt longer. The tube removed, William coughing and gasping, his throat raw. Martha held his hand so tightly her knuckles went white. Martha? His first word, barely audible. "I'm here, love. I'm here. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Shh. We know. We read the letter. We know everything." Horror crossed William's face, then shame, then fear. You opened the box?" Rebecca moved closer. "You told me to, Dad. Remember? Before surgery. You said if something happened." William struggled to remember through the fog of medication and trauma. "I did?" "You know what I did," he said finally, voice cracking. "What they did to me." "We know you're a hero," Martha said firmly. "That's what we know." The next days blurred together, sepsis clearing slowly. William weak and confused, his body exhausted from fighting death. The facial bandages came off. revealing swelling, bruising, surgical scars that would fade but never disappear. The right side of his face was numb, his smile crooked. Only the left side worked. He tried to smile at Martha anyway. "You're beautiful to me," she said, and meant it. While William recovered, Rebecca began searching. The letter was dated 1969. James Mitchell would be 76 now if he was still alive. She started with the Seattle address from the letter. The house still existed, according to Google Street View, but property records showed a different name now. Dead ends multiplied. Seattle Directory had no James Mitchell. Obituaries yielded nothing definitive. Social media searches turned up dozens of wrong James Mitchells. Patricia suggested trying the VA. Rebecca used her physician privileges to call the Seattle Veterans Affairs Office. Privacy laws restricted information, but a sympathetic clerk confirmed James R. Mitchell, Army veteran, was registered here. Deceased, 2015. Rebecca's heart sank. They'd missed him by 9 years. But his daughter Linda visits sometimes, the clerk added. She volunteers in our PTSD program. Rebecca left a detailed message. William Thompson, the soldier her father saved, needed to make contact. Then there was nothing to do but wait. 2 days later, her phone rang. Unknown Seattle number. "This is Linda Mitchell. I got a message about my father and a William Thompson." Rebecca's heart raced as she explained everything. The tumor, the surgery, the bullet fragment, the letter they'd found. Linda's voice broke. "Oh my God. My father looked for Bill for decades, every year. Wrote letters to the VA, Pentagon, veteran organizations, never found him." The story spilled out. James Mitchell had never stopped talking about the man who saved me. He'd died in 2015 of a heart attack at 73, but before his death made his family promise to keep searching. Linda had a box of her father's things, photos, letters, discharge papers, and her father's silver star from a different action. "He always said Bill deserved this one," Linda explained. "Is Bill still alive? Can I meet him?" "He just came out of ICU. But yes, he's alive. I'm driving down tonight." "I'm bringing my kids," Rebecca told Martha and William. William's fear was immediate. I can't face them." "Yes, you can," Martha said. "They want to thank you." "For what?" "I got court-martialed. I failed." Rebecca took his hand, the one that wasn't connected to iVersus. "Dad, you saved a man who went on to have a family. That's not failure. That's immortality." The next afternoon, Linda Mitchell arrived with her family. William had been moved to a regular room, could sit up now, though he was nervous enough that Martha felt his hand trembling. Rebecca opened the door. "They're here." Linda entered first, 60 years old, gray hair, kind face that carried echoes of her father's features from the photograph. Behind her came her son, her daughter, and 4 grandchildren ranging from 8 to 16. 7 people total. They stopped when they saw William. The silence was heavy, emotional, full of 56 years of searching. Linda walked slowly to the bedside. "Mr. Thompson, I'm Linda, James Mitchell's daughter." William's voice shook. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I couldn't save him completely." Linda looked confused. "Couldn't save him? You gave him 47 more years?" She sat, took his hand gently. "My father talked about you every single day. Every single day. I grew up hearing, 'Bill Thompson is the reason you exist, Linda.' When I graduated high school, 'Bill Thompson is the reason you're here.' When I got married, 'Bill Thompson should walk you down the aisle, not me.' He never stopped looking for you. Linda's son brought forward a box. Inside were dozens of letters, all addressed to various military offices over 45 years. Subject: locating William Thompson. The last one dated 2014, a year before James died. He never gave up, Linda said softly. She showed photos. James's wedding in 1971, holding a sign that read, "Bill Thompson made this possible." Linda's birth in 1972, a card saying, "I'm naming her after Bill's mother." Each grandchild's birth photo had a note. Another life because of Bill Thompson. The oldest grandchild, a 16-year-old girl named Michelle, stepped forward. "Mr. Thompson, my name is Michelle, named after my grandpa. He told me before he died, if you ever find Bill Thompson, tell him thank you. So I'm telling you, thank you. I'm here because of you." William broke completely. Decades of shame cracking under the weight of gratitude he'd never imagined. "I didn't know. I never knew." Linda continued, gently. "My father had 3 children. We have 7 grandchildren between us. That's 11 people alive today because you disobeyed an order. And our children will have children. You didn't just save one life. You created generations." Rebecca, watching from the doorway, saw her father finally understand. All these years he thought he'd failed. The reality was he'd become the patriarch of a family tree he didn't know existed. Linda's daughter brought forward a shadow box. Inside, James's silver star, his dog tags, and a new plaque that read, "In memory of Private James R. Mitchell, who was saved by true heroism." This medal belongs to William Thompson, the man who valued life over orders. "Dad wanted you to have this. He wrote it in his will." William stared at the medal. "I can't accept this. I didn't earn it." "You earned it more than anyone I know." Linda hugged him carefully, mindful of the bandages and IV lines. "Thank you for my father. Thank you for my life. Thank you." William's voice was barely a whisper. "Your father was worth it. You're all worth it." The room filled with tears, Rebecca and Martha holding each other. Patricia in the corner crying too. Grace, who'd come to check vitals, now witnessing something that transcended medicine. A week later, Linda's son, a journalist, asked permission to write the story. William hesitated, but Linda convinced him. "People need to know. Not just about you. About all the soldiers who did the right thing and got punished." The Seattle Times published the article with the headline, "The Hero They Forgot: How a Soldier's Disobedience Saved a Family." It went viral within hours, shared thousands of times. The comments section filled with other Vietnam veterans coming forward with similar stories of punishment for humanity. The Seattle VA contacted William, offering to review his case. The Article 15 could be expunged, his record corrected after 56 years. The Purple Heart would be officially awarded. A Bronze Star with Valor was recommended. A ceremony was planned at the Seattle VA when William was healthy enough. Other soldiers from William's old platoon reached out. Earl Watson called, his voice thick. "Bill, I always wanted to tell you the truth. I was there. I saw Henderson shoot you. We all did. They made us stay silent." Multiple witnesses confirming what William had carried alone for decades. "I wasn't crazy," William said to Martha that night. "It really happened." "I always believed you," she said, "even when you wouldn't tell me." One afternoon, after the article had spread across the country, Rebecca visited alone. William was strong enough to walk now, slowly, with a cane. They walked the hospital corridor together. "Beck, I need to explain something. About your wedding." "Dad, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. I've been silent too long." He stopped walking, leaned on the cane. "I wanted to be there, more than anything. But the church, the crowd, the uniforms, your wedding party had military friends. I started having panic attacks weeks before, flashbacks to the court-martial standing in front of everyone being judged. I thought I could push through. I got in the car that day, drove halfway there, had to pull over, couldn't breathe. I sat in that parking lot for 2 hours, crying, trying to make myself go. I couldn't. I failed you." "Dad, that's not failure. That's PTSD. Why didn't you tell me? I was ashamed. My daughter's special day and I couldn't even show up. But I thought you didn't care. That's so much worse than knowing you were struggling." They stood in the corridor, years of misunderstanding finally being cleared. "I'm sorry I made you think I didn't care," William said. "I've always cared. I just didn't know how to show it without falling apart. I'm sorry I shut you out. I should have asked why." "If I ever get married again," Rebecca said, "we'll do it different. Just us. You, me, Mom. Courthouse. No crowds." William smiled his crooked smile. "I'd like that. And maybe the Mitchell family. They're kind of our family now, too. That'd be nice." They walked further, William's steps growing stronger. "You know what the tumor taught me?" he asked. "What?" "That secrets are worse than bullets. Bullets eventually work their way out or get removed. Secrets just burrow deeper." Rebecca understood. "Can we promise each other something? No more secrets, no more silence. We tell each other the truth, even when it's hard." "I don't know if I can talk about everything yet." "Then we'll start small. But we'll start. Deal." They shook hands, then hugged, for the first time in 5 years. A real hug, long and tight. 45 years of distance finally closing. 3 months passed with the slow certainty of healing. William returned home in early November, the Portland rain welcoming him back with its familiar rhythm against the windows. The facial numbness was permanent, the doctors confirmed, but manageable. His crooked smile became simply his smile. Martha loved it, traced it with her fingers in the morning light. He grew a beard to cover part of the scar, and Rebecca teased him about looking distinguished. "Very professorial, Dad." You could teach woodworking at the community college. The daily routine changed in fundamental ways. William no longer hid in his workshop for hours. Instead, he attended the Vietnam Veterans Support Group at the VFW Hall every Wednesday evening. The first time he walked through those doors after 20 years of avoiding them, Earl Watson stood and embraced him. "Welcome home, brother. Really home this time." William shared his story with the group. All of it. The shooting, the court-martial, the 56 years of silence. The tumor that forced truth into light. Other veterans began opening up too, their own buried stories surfacing. The group leader, a Marine from the Gulf War, told William privately, "Your honesty is giving others permission to heal." Medical follow-ups became routine. Every 6 weeks at OHSU, Dr. Carter would review new scans, check healing progress, assess nerve recovery. In January, she delivered the news they'd been hoping for. "You're cancer-free." The tumor was completely benign, entirely removed. I don't expect recurrence. William sat back in the examination chair. So the war tried to kill me again, but I survived again. Dr. Carter smiled. You're remarkably resilient, Mr. Thompson. No, I just have good reasons to stay alive now. He glanced at Martha, who squeezed his hand. Physical therapy continued for the facial nerve damage, exercises in front of the mirror, trying to retrain muscles that no longer received clear signals. Small improvements came. He could close his right eye now, barely. The smile grew slightly more symmetrical. Rebecca visited for these sessions, cheering small victories. Dad, you're not going to be a supermodel, but you're definitely presentable. At 72, I'll take presentable. December brought an invitation that Martha found in the mail one afternoon. Official letterhead from the Seattle VA Hospital, a military honors ceremony scheduled for December 15th. William would receive the Purple Heart formally, the Bronze Star with Valor for saving Mitchell under fire, and the Article 15 would be officially expunged from his record with a written apology. William stared at the invitation for a long time. 56 years late. But it's happening, Martha said. Better late than never. The morning of December 15th dawned clear and cold, unusual for Seattle in winter. William dressed in his old Army uniform, the first time in 56 years. Martha had to help with the buttons. His hands shook too much. You look handsome, she said, smoothing the shoulders. I look old. You look like my hero. Rebecca arrived with Tom, her new boyfriend, a high school history teacher with kind eyes, who treated William with genuine respect, not the forced politeness some men showed veterans. Patricia rode with them, honorary family now. The drive north to Seattle took 3 hours, the conversation easy and warm. The Seattle VA Hospital's ceremony hall was larger than William expected, filled with perhaps 200 people. Veterans, families, media, VA officials. The Mitchell family sat in the front row, Linda and her children, and all 7 grandchildren, dressed formally, faces bright with anticipation. Grace Hayes had driven up from Portland, wouldn't miss it. Dr. Carter came too, sitting quietly in the back. Earl Watson and 3 other members of William's old platoon sat together, gray-haired and weathered, but proud. The VA director gave the opening speech, his voice carrying through the hall's excellent acoustics. Private William Thompson represents the best of American values, moral courage. He chose life over orders, humanity over obedience. The military failed him in 1968. Today, we honor him correctly. This recognition is 56 years late, but heroism doesn't expire. When William's name was called, Martha steadied him as he stood. His legs shook walking to the podium. The Purple Heart was pinned to his chest, the Bronze Star added beside it. The director handed him a leather folder containing the expungement of his Article 15 and the official apology. They asked if he wanted to say a few words. William hadn't prepared anything, hadn't expected to speak. He stood at the microphone looking at 200 faces and felt the weight of 56 years lifting. I don't feel like a hero. I just did what felt right. His voice was quiet at first, then grew stronger. But if my story helps one soldier speak up, one veteran get help, then this was worth it. To James Mitchell, my brother, I'm sorry it took me this long to honor you publicly. Thank you for never giving up on finding me." He paused, collecting himself. "To my wife, Martha, thank you for 46 years of patience. I'm finally home. To my daughter, Rebecca, I'm sorry it took almost dying to start living. I love you." He couldn't continue. Emotion choked the words. He saluted instead, the first salute he'd given with pride in half a century. The audience stood, returning the salute, and in that moment, William felt something he'd thought lost forever: honor. Michelle, Linda's granddaughter, asked to speak, representing the Mitchell family. At 17, she stood tall and confident at the microphone. "My great-grandfather James told me there are two types of people: those who follow orders and those who follow their conscience. Bill Thompson followed his conscience. I'm here today because of that choice. My mom is here, my aunts and uncles, my cousins. 11 people exist because one man said no. That's not just heroism. That's legacy." She gave William a framed family tree with his name at the top and the Mitchell family branching below in careful calligraphy. "You're our family too. You always were." The ceremony concluded with a group photograph. William and Martha at the center, Rebecca beside her father, the Mitchell family surrounding them, Patricia included. Grace and Dr. Carter in the back, Earl Watson and the other platoon members. 56 years of silence, broken. 56 years of shame, transformed into honor. That evening, driving home to Portland, William was quiet. Martha knew him well enough not to push, just held his hand across the console. Rebecca and Tom followed in their car, Patricia dozing in the passenger seat. "What are you thinking?" Martha finally asked as they crossed back into Oregon. "I'm thinking I wasted a lot of years carrying something that wasn't mine to carry." "You're not wasting them now." "No, I'm not." Christmas came with an energy the Thompson house hadn't seen in years. William suggested hosting, which surprised Martha so much she nearly dropped the phone while calling Rebecca. "Your father wants to have Christmas here, with everyone." "Everyone?" "The Mitchells, Patricia, Earl and his wife, Grace, Dr. Carter if she's free, Tom, of course." Rebecca smiled into the phone. "Dad's actually hosting people? Voluntarily?" "I know. It's a Christmas miracle." The day arrived with typical Portland weather, rain mixed with weak sunshine. The house filled with people and noise and laughter. Martha had cooked for 2 days straight: turkey, ham, her famous cornbread stuffing, 3 types of pie. Borrowed tables from neighbors to seat 20 people. William sat at the head of the table, and for the first time in his adult life, felt comfortable being the center of attention. The Mitchell grandchildren played in the living room. Rebecca and Tom helped Martha in the kitchen. Earl Watson told old war stories, but the healing kind, funny, human, honest. At dinner they took turns with toasts. Earl raised his glass. "To Bill, who taught us that courage isn't following orders, it's knowing when not to." Linda Mitchell, "To the man who gave us our family." Rebecca, "To Dad, who finally let us in." Martha, "To my husband, who came home after 56 years. William tapped his glass, surprising everyone. The room quieted. "I want to say something. For most of my life I carried shame. Thought I failed, thought I was weak. This tumor, this near death, it forced me to face what I'd been hiding. And what I found wasn't shame. It was love. From my wife, my daughter, from James Mitchell's family. I thought the war took everything from me. Turns out, it gave me a second family I didn't know I had. So thank you, all of you, for not giving up on a stubborn old man. The afternoon dissolved into card games and storytelling. The Mitchell children taught Tom how to play poker. Martha and Linda discovered shared interests in gardening and book clubs, already planning regular visits. William watched it all from his chair, actually laughing, telling war stories he'd never told before, not glorifying, just honest. War is hell, but sometimes humans are heaven. As guests left that evening, the hugs were long and genuine. William stood on the porch waving, tired but happy. Rebecca was last to leave. "Dad, thank you for today." "For what?" "For showing me it's never too late to come home." That night, Martha and William cleaned up, despite Rebecca's insistence they leave it. They moved through the kitchen in comfortable silence, the good kind they'd built over 46 years. "Can you believe all this started with a pimple?" Martha said, drying dishes. William laughed. "Strangest blessing I ever had." "What do you mean?" "If that tumor hadn't forced me to the hospital, I never would have told you. Never would have reconciled with Beck. Never would have found the Mitchell family. So I guess I'm saying the war saved me by almost killing me again. Funny how that works." Martha set down the towel and kissed him. "Not funny. Miraculous." Later, getting ready for bed, William asked about the metal box. "What should we do with it? What do you think?" "Maybe donate it to the Veterans Museum. Let other people see that it's okay to tell the truth." Martha nodded. "You sure?" "Yeah, it's not a secret anymore. It's a story. And stories should be shared." They lay in bed together, the house quiet around them. William took his medications, fewer now, healing, progressing. Martha read beside him, her reading glasses perched on her nose. "You know what's funny?" William said. "What?" "I survived Vietnam. Survived a bullet from my own officer. Survived 50 years of silence. And a pimple almost took me out." They both laughed, the sound filling the bedroom with something that had been missing for decades, lightness. "But it didn't," Martha said. "You're still here." "We're still here. 46 years and counting. Best 46 years of my life. Even the hard ones." 1 year later, the Pacific Northwest Veterans Museum in Seattle opened a new exhibit, Hidden Heroism, Stories of Moral Courage in Vietnam. William and Martha's box was the centerpiece, displayed in a climate-controlled glass case. The metal box, James's letter, dog tags, photographs, court-martial documents, the Purple Heart, Bronze Star, and the bullet fragment removed during surgery, all arranged to tell the story completely. The plaque read, "Private William Thompson disobeyed a direct order on April 28, 1968, to save Private James Mitchell. He was shot by his own commanding officer and court-martialed for his actions. 56 years later, his courage created a family of 11 people, inspired policy changes in military justice, and reminded us that true heroism sometimes means saying no." Opening night drew over 200 people. William, now 73, gave a speech to the crowd. Martha stood in the front row, wearing his old dog tags as a necklace. Rebecca beside her, now engaged to Tom, the entire Mitchell family present. "This exhibit isn't about me," William said from the podium. "It's about all the soldiers who did the right thing and paid the price." It's about the James Mitchells who were saved, the families who exist because someone cared more about life than orders. And it's about the tumors, literal and figurative, that we carry from war. Mine was a piece of metal that tried to kill me twice, but in the end, it saved me. It forced me to go to the hospital, to open up, to let people in. I spent 50 years thinking I was broken. Turns out, I was just waiting to heal. So to anyone out there carrying silence, carrying shame, carrying pieces of war inside them, please get help, talk, open the box. It might save your life. It saved mine. After the speech, a young veteran approached, Iraq War, maybe 24, wearing the weight of unseen wounds. Mr. Thompson, I have nightmares. I did something in Fallujah. I can't talk about it. William understood immediately. Can you write it down? Maybe. Start there. I wrote for 50 years before I could speak. Everyone's timeline is different, but you've taken the first step by being here. The young man's eyes filled. Thank you for your service, and thank you for still being here. The exhibition closed at 10. William, Martha, Rebecca, Tom, and the Mitchell family were last to leave. They stood together in front of the glass case, looking at the pieces of a story that had remained hidden for 56 years. William touched the glass. James, I hope you can see this. I hope you know your story mattered. Linda put her hand on his shoulder. He knows, and he's proud. They walked out together into the Seattle night. Rain had started. Of course it had. This was the Pacific Northwest. But no one complained. Rebecca suggested coffee, and they found an all-night diner that served terrible coffee and wonderful pie. Around the table, 3 generations of families connected by one act of courage 56 years ago. William looked at each face and felt something he'd thought impossible. Peace. The pimple that forced him to the hospital. The tumor that revealed the bullet. The bullet that connected him to James Mitchell. James Mitchell, whose family became his family. Every piece necessary, every moment leading to this. Sitting in a diner at midnight, surrounded by people who knew his story and loved him anyway. To second chances, Rebecca raised her coffee cup. They all raised their cups, terrible diner coffee in chipped mugs, but it tasted like redemption. Outside, the rain continued to fall on Seattle, on Portland, 30 miles south, on the Pacific Northwest that had witnessed so much pain and healing. And in a museum, behind glass, a small piece of metal that had traveled through a man's body for 56 years now rested still, its journey complete, its story finally told. The war hadn't won. Love had. Truth had. Family had. William Thompson, 73 years old, hero, father, husband, smiled his crooked smile and squeezed his wife's hand under the table. Finally, he was home. Sometimes the smallest things carry the heaviest truths. William Thompson thought it was just a pimple, something so ordinary, so dismissible, but that tiny bump on his jaw held a secret buried for 56 years. A bullet fragment from 1968, fired not by the enemy, but by his own commanding officer. For saving a fellow soldier's life, William was shot and court-martialed. He carried that shame in silence for half a century, pushing away the people who loved him most. It took a tumor, a near-death experience, and the courage to finally open a locked metal box for the truth to emerge. What he discovered wasn't shame. It was a legacy. 11 people existed because he said no to a wrong order. His daughter forgave him. His wife truly knew him, and the family of the man he saved had been searching for him for decades, just to say thank you. The war didn't win. Love did. If you've ever carried something too heavy to share, or pushed away someone you loved because you thought you were protecting them, this story is for you. What secret have you been carrying that might actually be your greatest strength? Have you ever discovered that what you thought was your failure was actually your finest moment? Share your story below. Your words might help someone else find the courage to heal.